Well, there's a fear, it's a very real fear, and I think a very justified fear, that somehow profit-motivated big corporations, big multinationals will, in a post-prohibition world, take over the drugs industry and then aggressively market some of these products in the way they have done with alcohol and tobacco in the past, for example, and we'll see a dramatic rise in use and associated health harms. Now, I think a lot of those fears are very much justified. We've seen alcohol and tobacco, big tobacco, big pharma behave appallingly over the last century, and we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. I think it's also important to point out that at the moment we've abdicated responsibility to organised crime. So to a certain extent we now have big mafia. We've got an industry worth turning over something like $300 billion a year, entirely controlled by unregulated organised crime. But again, what you've got there is a lack of regulation from organised criminals, and with big tobacco and big alcohol, you've got lack of regulation, but it's within the legal entrepreneurial sphere. So they both suffer from a lack of regulation. What we need to do as we move forward is to make sure that we get it right this time and that we have the appropriate level of regulation of the market, and that we see that policy is guided not by corporate profits, and it's not shaped by corporate profits or corporate needs, but it's shaped by the need to serve the public good, and it's governments and public health authorities who are making those decisions, and that it's public health is what's driving it, not private profit. And if you look at this graph, this U-curve, for example, you can see tobacco and alcohol have historically been way over to the right on this graph, but now they are finally being brought to heel. So even big tobacco and big alcohol are less big alcohol and big tobacco than they used to be. They are now slowly moving towards the centre, certainly in most of the developed world. We're seeing increasing restrictions on marketing, we're seeing price controls, we're seeing packaging controls and so on. So we're having better regulation, but it's been kind of retrofitted on an inappropriately regulated system historically. At the same time, we're now seeing cannabis and some other drugs beginning to move from the war on drugs over here on the left towards the centre as well. Now the goal is the same. The goal is optimum levels of regulation, even if the starting points are different. But uniquely with drugs, we have this opportunity to get it right this time. And I think we have a responsibility as citizens and as governments to make sure that we do get it right. And that may mean exploring some unfamiliar market models. So we may look at, for example, government monopolies, where you take the profit-motivated corporations out of the equation entirely. Or, for example, we look at non-profit cooperatives, such as the cannabis social clubs that we're seeing emerge in Spain, for example. So there are options there. Now, it may be that in some jurisdictions that's not realistic and that we can't eliminate a profit motivation entirely. But what we need to make sure is not that there's no commercialisation at all and that there's no profit making or no entrepreneurship. It's that we don't have over-commercialisation, that we don't go down the road of, say, the tobacco industry in the 1950s. We have an opportunity and we have a responsibility to get it right this time, and we need to make sure that we do.